Okay, so over the weekend with Trump, there was some news in regards to tariffs and IRS. So let's see what he said here about the
United States and Colombia have been pulled back from the brink of a trade war. Tensions escalated after Colombia denied entry to deportation flights arriving from the United States. It led to threats of sanctions and tariffs from both sides. Now the White House says Colombia has agreed to all of President Trump's deportation terms. NBC's Alice Bard joins me now from D.C. Good morning, Alice. So how did this standoff begin?
Francis, a very quickly evolving situation. Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, took issue with the use of U.S. military planes, saying a migrant is not a criminal and should be treated with the dignity a human being deserves. That led President Trump to threaten tariffs and visa restrictions on Colombian officials. Colombia then threatened to retaliate with tariffs of its own. Now, the White House says Colombia has agreed to all of its terms, including accepting military flights, saying the tariffs will be held in reserve and not signed unless Colombia fails to honor this agreement. For its part, Colombia says it will guarantee deportees dignified conditions. The country's foreign minister is set to travel to Washington in the coming days to meet about the agreement.
Thanks for watching.
All right, so essentially he sent the people back on military, looked like C-130s or something he had there. Not sure what those were. And supposedly these are people who actually had a criminal record. These are like the worst of the migrants who they had to catch, who've committed crimes, who've been released back in the community, who've ran out on bail, who've been known to do things and just haven't gotten caught. So these are the people he's arresting or deporting. But then the guy comes along and says, "Oh, well, these are human beings. They shouldn't be on military flights. They should be on what, commercial with Emirates." Like, I mean, I don't, I don't see how that has anything to do with being a human being. If you're on a military flight versus commercial, but okay, whatever. So Trump, being who he is, immediately decided, all right, well, you can't tell me no mofo. We're going to turn up the heat on all of y'all and put these threats out here on Colombia. 25% right away, 25 will go to 50. Travel bans on all government and family, right? That's the most important thing after all, right? Get the government in their cronies inside. Never mind the everyday Colombian. There's no need to put any kind of travel ban on them. They're already struggling. Let's focus on the elitists in government who are living well. And I guess it worked. I guess it worked. They decided to accept the migrants, no problem. And also, by the way, he will treat them with the dignity that they deserve. Which honestly, I don't really know what to say in that regard. I don't see the kind of flight that somebody's on. I don't see how that has any relevance to one's humanity or not. I mean, if they were hog-tied, had, just sitting in somewhere, not even strapped in, and they're going from left to right and got broken bones and fractures all over when they get there, that would be something different. But that's not the complaint. So to me, looks like the guy was just reaching, got a wake-up call, and now he's back in line. Now, since then, he also, over the weekend, Trump went to Vegas and spoke a little bit about 80-something thousand IRS workers that was hired under Trump. The population, more of a population than many cities, hired as IRS workers. Let's see what he has to say about that. That's important.
Look, he's keeping his promises, that's for sure. He was in Las Vegas over the weekend proposing a new plan for the nearly 90,000 IRS agents that Joe Biden hired under the last 4 years. Trump has new ideas. Watch this.
On day one, I immediately halted the hiring of any new IRS agents. They hired or tried to hire 88,000 new workers to go after you. And we're in the process of developing a plan to either terminate all of them or maybe we'll move them to the border.
Yeah.
I think we're going to move them to the border. Well, they're allowed to carry guns. You know, they're so strong on guns, but these people are allowed to carry guns. So we'll probably move them to the border.
Your reaction, I mean, this is incredible, proposing sending these IRS agents to the border. What are they going to do? One of the issues here is that President Trump found out that a majority of the audits that were done, a Treasury Inspector General report found that more than 90% of the agency audits between 2019 and 2023 were taxpayers making less than $400,000 a year, Chris.
Okay, let's chime in. So 88,000, which is a staggering, grotesque, evil figure, wickedness at its finest to go after. And then so you hire 88,000, and then within that, 90+% of your audits were hardworking, middle class, let's call it upper middle class families making less than $400,000 a year. Now, for those of you who don't know, $100,000 is not what it used to be, especially depending on where you live in the U.S. I'll be honest. I mean, in my family, we probably made close to last year, a couple $100,000, and it didn't mean much, to be honest with you. It didn't mean much at all. Almost like nothing, to be honest with you. And I'm in the Midwest. So if I was in San Francisco or in California or something like that, I may have even been homeless making that kind of money. So don't be deceived thinking, oh, $400,000 is a lot of money. It isn't. These are middle class people. So you hire 80-something thousand people, and you go after not your rich cronies in government who are already avoiding taxes as a strategy, right? And have all kinds of tricks of the trade that they're doing. But you go after the hardworking middle class folk. It's truly evil. It's truly sick. I'm great. That is great news that he's in the process of putting the plan together to fire them or send them to the border. I'm personally in preferential. I would prefer that they be fired. If you want to send 20 or 30,000 with guns to the front line and have them standing there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, great. In miserable conditions, preferably, right? Out there with scorpions and not even an outhouse, a couple of cases of water, and some kind of a poorly constructed storage unit where they gotta, have military transport come in every other day to get them supplies. That would be my preference to where those IRS agents should be. Seriously, I mean, we're talking wickedness at its finest. And this cat, Joe Biden, it doesn't cease to amaze me. And here's the thing: at the end of the day, I hate to boil it down to two individuals, Trump versus Biden. Although I see Trump as a guy who understands that even though he's in the billionaire boys club, they do what they do, they pillage the world. I think he understands enough to know that if there's nothing left for us to pillage, what are we doing? Like, you guys are going so far that there's not even going to be anything left. So I think he knows enough to say, all right, we got to balance this thing out a little bit. Whereas Biden, he was essentially a rubber stamp. Just whatever came in front of him, we're just going to rubber stamp this thing through. And it amazes me how many people in the so-called left really believe that this guy had their favor in mind, even though, sure enough, there were some changes, especially as it relates to the whole gender thing and sexual indecencies in public. Primarily, that's what he's known for, surgeries for kids and all this kind of stuff. That's what we celebrate. The hiring of more IRS workers that resides in the average city to go after people making less than $400,000 a year. Is that what we celebrate? So salute to Trump for that. I truly hope that he can get those people out of there as soon as possible and help bring greater balance to this whole fiasco. The situation is clearly out of hand. So I hope that he can succeed in what he's doing, and that the people who are in those 80,000 jobs, I hope they wake up in cold sweats, worried about their future, because they should. It's absolutely ridiculous. We don't need that level of federal governance. They need to find something else to do.